Hello and welcome to Marsden's Art House. I'm Ian David Marsden. I'm a cartoonist and illustrator, and today we're going to create my holiday Christmas card for 2024. This is not going to be a drawing tutorial, but it will be a tutorial on how to create professional digital art from start to finish, from the blank canvas to a final printable file. The thing I want to do for my Christmas card is Santa Claus and Rudolph enjoying a nice cup of hot cocoa or coffee on a snowy ledge. Obviously, I'm going to speed things up a little bit. Probably the video will end up being about 20 minutes. So everybody relax. Since we're drawing a cozy Christmas scene with hot cocoa, I suggest you make yourself a nice cup of coffee or hot cocoa and follow along. Hopefully you'll pick up a trick or two, or remember something that you had forgotten, or simply enjoy watching the drawing unfold. For this card, I'm working in Procreate on my iPad Pro using an Apple Pencil. I like to use a watercolor brush, relatively large, in a light blue. How I want to position things and where things will be in general. As you can see here, Santa. Now his head was a little too big, so I cut it out and made it a bit smaller, transformed it. I want Rudolph to be sitting next to him. Both of them will be holding a delightful cup of hot cocoa, or cappuccino, or soy latte, that I enjoy, by the way. That wasn't a joke. There's a little star in the sky. I'm indicating that I want some snowflakes. And now I create a new layer for my black line art. For this, I'm using one of my favorite inking pens that I use frequently in Procreate. I'm using my light blue pencil lines and the little wash I put down before as a guide, but I'm also exploring, putting my own lines where I want them. Sometimes little shapes, and what I also want to do at this point is find a palette in the colors that would reflect Santa and Christmas. And this one looks pretty good. So I'm going to make that my default palette. It makes it easier later to pick colors. So here we go. I'm just going to complete the line art here. Speed this up a little bit. Give you a full view. Of course, a signature, always very important, especially if this is my own holiday card that I will be sending out to everybody soon. Okay, so now I have my line art the way I like it. I'm going to lay down some flat, dark colors for the sky in the background. This is a chalk brush that I like to use. It's called Oberon. I'm not quite sure why. I think it was in one of the packs that I purchased. Pretty sure it was. I have so many packs and brushes that frankly I haven't kept them all completely cleanly separated. My favorites I tend to drag into my own personal favorites folder, which in my Procreate I've called Lighthouse. I'm now duplicating this layer, and I'm going to smush it up a bit with a watercolor brush, which will blend the different hues of blue and give it a more washed out look. I started out as a traditional illustrator. Yes, I really am already that old, and learned everything the old way with markers, watercolors, and gouache, and Ecoline, watercolor tints, which was fun and which was great, of course, but used to be quite complicated. Of course, you couldn't erase, and there was no Alt-Z undo, but it means that I sometimes still do traditional artwork, and in my digital artwork, I really enjoy having a somewhat natural art look. Now that I have a rough blue night sky background, I'm going to put a white layer down between my line art and the background. I do this with a brush, if your line art is incredibly clean and there are absolutely no gaps, you could, of course, take the file into Photoshop and then use the magic wand, select it, put in a white filler, and then bring it back in. I find that the automatic selection in Procreate is not super accurate. Also, I like to brush in my white because I like to decide which little thing sticking out is actually going to be white and which isn't. I don't want to leave that up to an automatic selection. This is a complicated procedure somewhat, but later on this white layer will come in extremely handy because I'm going to keep selecting it for coloring and other purposes. So it's an effort well worth its while. Now, one thing that you can do in Procreate that can save you some time is you can drag the color with your finger. You just hold the color at the top and drag it into your drawing. Drag it in and drop it. However, there's something you need to look out for. When you drag in the color, sometimes it leaves dots between where you drew the outline and where you drag in the color. This can look very bad and can cause problems later on. Unfortunately, these you have to just manually clean up and be aware of. There we go, nice and clean. Now that I have my clean white block on a layer, I will select it, which means it'll select that whole area. And I will create a new layer and name that Flat Colors. Now I'm going to take a solid inking brush and start filling in flats. I'm also laying down, actually here with a softer brush, just a few little snow shadows underneath to give me the shape of the snow, as well as Rudolph's body color. As you can see, the background is thinly lined. This means this shows you only the area I'm painting in is the area of my previously created white art that has been selected. The brush cannot pass outside. And fill everything in with a flat basic color. This is a traditional comic book coloring technique. You'll have your flats on one layer, and then on many other layers you can add shading, highlights, or details, or texture, or all kinds of things. Now I want to lay down some stars in the sky. For this, I like to experiment with various splatter and splash brushes. Again, Procreate has a bunch of these, and you can find them for free, make them yourself, and also purchase some wonderful brush packs. Sometimes this is hit and miss. I don't always remember what all of these brushes do. Sometimes you can also play with the blend modes and with the brush size, of course. These sparkles seem pretty nice for the star in the sky. Of course, for snow, you can also add a Gaussian blur or a motion blur, or, there's lots of different filters and effects. Some noise if you wanted. But this is part of the fun, too. You play around and you see what you like and what you don't like. Since this is not for a client or for a project where I have specific guidelines, I can do pretty much whatever I want. I just want it to look good. So here I am just messing around. This is why it's always a good idea to put things on different layers. Even 10 minutes later, you might come back and say, drats, this is too much snow, or I don't like this. And then you can just turn it off, change it, whatever. Never, ever, ever pile everything onto the same layer. You'll regret it. So I added a blur to the snow, which gives a little bit of a depth effect too. None of this is written in stone. I'm going to come back to this later and play around with it. Once I add some lighting effects and shading and other things, this may look good, this may not look good, but this is part of the fun. This is the point where I'm going to take a sip from my lovely cup of coffee, because just seeing them there with theirs makes me feel like having a sip. I hope you're enjoying this. I plan on making many more like this, and others as well. Leave a suggestion in the comments or tell me what you would like to see, and I'll try and make a video for that purpose. This is a new channel, Marsden's Art House, which is the whole purpose. Having an art house where we can all come and make art and have fun. Okay, so now I'm going to duplicate my line art layer, which is something I like to do. I'm going to turn off the original one, which is in black, and then I'm going to lock the alpha, or the transparency. This means I can draw over it, and only the areas where my black lines are will be changed. And now, above the flat colors, I'll add another layer. I'll just call this detail. And with a watercolor brush, I'll start laying down just some shading, some folds. Okay, so now I'm looking at this and I don't like the color of Rudolph. It's too orangish, pinkish. So I'm going to pick a slightly different, darker brown. And I'm dragging this directly onto my flats layer, onto the previous color of Rudolph, and it colors in only that area. So as you can see, this is why the white layer and then later the flats layer comes in very handy. Yeah, he looks a lot better like that. By the way, here you can see what the different effects are if I change the blend mode. Usually I have some good music playing also in the background in my studio. Occasionally podcasts or audiobooks. But drawing is always a very enjoyable and relaxing moment of meditation. Once again, I'm going to select my white layer so that it's selected. I'm going to make a new layer called Highlights, and I'm going to follow along the edges with a light yellow or light orange. These are all personal choices. Obviously, if the lighting was red, then I would use red as a highlight. Again, once this is painted, you could also change the blend mode to lighten it. The light source to me is in the top left. Therefore, the light reflection is coming from the top left, although I am not really calculating this in a mathematical way. As you can see, I put some on his belly. Again, this is basically how you want it to look. What does your style look like? And what do you want to do? This is your drawing. By the way, if this art inspired you to create something, please share. I would love to see it. Again, write a comment. Or you can also find my email information on my homepage. These things don't need to be done in public if you don't want to, but I would be very interested. As I move along, I add layers, I add little touches, I add some shading, I add some blue, I add some texture, I use some texture brushes. I'm going to add some more snow. These are various brushes from the brush set Splash and Spray. I'm going to put them on different layers and probably add some blur to some of the layers as well to add some depth. And then I'm also going to put a snow layer over everything, including over my line art, because the snow would be in front of people as well. And Santa and Rudolph are really sitting in a bit of a blizzard here. But it's a beautiful, serene, quiet, and lovely moment. I'm just kind of dabbing the snow. I also want to dab it around the outside. And these kind of illustrations that are evoking the look and feel of a real watercolor, I love it when the edges of my artwork also look like real watercolor. So I will keep dabbing away some snow. Here I'm going to add a little bit of snow behind everybody with a lower opacity and a Gaussian blur. Yeah, that looks good. I feel like Bob Ross. And I'll clean up the edges with a texture brush, emulating watercolor also, giving me a nice little vignette. Hey, this is starting to look pretty good. I'm pretty happy with this. I think I'm going to send this off to the printer, and I'm going to prepare my annual end of the year newsletter to all of the people who follow me. I hope you enjoyed this. I surely did. And I look forward to making many more videos. Thanks for watching, and Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays, and happy creating.